Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So let's start with today's discussion. Um, I hope you can listen. Okay. Last time we had a discussion on uh, inheritance, and we talked about public inheritance. Today, I'll just recap what we did last time. So, in order to make your code more readable and to make it a bit more, say, accessible and understandable, you divide the concepts into base class and the derived classes, and the derived classes have some common attributes, and all those common attributes that could be functions or data members, they are made part of the base class. And uh, uh, and then you can the derived class can access all the functions and the data members which are present in the base class through uh, through inheritance. And the inheritance that we discussed last time was public inheritance. So there are two other types of inheritance that we'll discuss later. One is the private inheritance, and the other one is the protected inheritance. Yeah, so these are the two other types, but there are certain other concepts that are related to public inheritance. So we'll discuss those concepts first before moving on to the private and protected inheritance concepts. Um, so we discussed the syntax about writing down a code that could have a derived class and a base class. Um, some sample code was also discussed, and we discussed that how the constructors are actually called in case of uh, the the inheritance. So if you have a base class and a derived class, then the way the constructors are called uh, is uh, is in the sequence that first of all the constructor of the base class is called, and then the constructor of the derived class is called as soon as you declare an object of the derived class, right? So here, for example, you have car object. So if you declare car object in your code, the constructor for the base class would be called, and then the constructor for the private class will be called. So this is how the constructor call will be executed. um, so uh, so the base class constructor followed by the derived class constructors are actually called. Okay, so the next thing that is also very important, and that has some practical implications when you're writing down code, and that is the concept of multiple inheritance, right? So what is multiple inheritance? Now, as it is clear from the figure itself, which is shown on this slide, multiple inheritance is a case when you have more than one base classes for a given derived class. So here you have a derived class A, and then you have a base class B, and you have another base class which is C. Now both of these are the base classes. So you have base class 1 and base class 2, and the derived class is class A in this particular case, right? So if you have a situation like this, then uh, number one, what is the situation in which you can have multiple inheritance? That's the first thing that you need to know. The second thing is that each base class would have some functions and data members. Then how the inheritance would be done by the derived class. Um, and then you can add to this complexity by adding some more steps to inheritance, and we'll discuss this how that is actually implemented and how that is actually seen in case of constructors. Okay, so the question, कायम का जो question है, which he has written, in this case जब आपके पास multiple inheritance है, and if you have the constructor for class B and the constructor for class C, तो constructors कैसे call होंगे? And then you have the derived class also, और उसका अपना एक constructor होगा, right? So we'll come to that question. First of all, let's see that how to write down the case of multiple inheritance. Now here on the lower side of the slide, you see the syntax for writing down the multiple inheritance case. So you have this keyword class, so obviously that's there, the name of the subclass is there, and then you have the colon signature followed by the access mode, which would be which we have kept private, public so far. Okay, followed by the name of the base class 1, and then again the access access mode, and then the name of the second base class. Okay, so Nasir, the question ये है कि अगर आप उसको private कर देंगे तो क्या होगा? That is the discussion that we'll have a detailed discussion on that later. लेकिन let's for simplicity at this point in time, let's assume कि ये public ही है, private के ऊपर हम एक अलग से complete session करेंगे. So just hold on to this question for some time. Okay, so this is what the syntax for this particular code is. So here is the example code. So this is a small piece of code that actually declares two base classes. So vehicle is one base class that has been defined here, right? And you can see that vehicle ke andar you have a constructor which is associated with vehicle, right? So there is a constructor for that. And then here is a second base class, right? So this is a second base class that you have got. और उसके अंदर भी you have the constructor for the second base class. So the name of the first base class is vehicle, and the name of the second base class is four-wheeler. And then we have the constructor associated with each of these two classes. ठीक है, so vehicle का अपना constructor है और four-wheeler का अपना एक constructor है. Okay, so now let's define the derived class here. So the derived class here is the name given to that derived class is car. Okay, so this is the name of the derived class, car, and followed by the access mode and the name of the first base class, access mode, obviously you have to put a comma here, followed by the name of the second base class. Okay, so these are the two base classes that provide access to the derived class, which is car in this case. Okay, so this is what is happening here. So car is actually inheriting all the functions that are present in vehicle and all the functions that are present in four-wheeler. And this is public inheritance. That means everything is accessible by a car, right? And that all these functions can also be accessed from the main program also. Okay, so if we, so Hassan ka question ye hai कि if we inherit from a class which is also inheriting from another class. Okay, so that's a sort of a hierarchy that you are developing. So you have a class here. So let's say कि अगर आपके पास एक क्लास A है और ये inherit कर रही है B से और ये inherit कर रही है C से, तो उस सूरत में क्या होगा? Is that what your question is? Okay, so so in this particular case, what will happen is that if you, so this is an example of a single inheritance, by the way. Okay, in a way, but it has multiple levels. So this is a situation in which B inherits from C, and that is a single inheritance, and then A inherits from B, that is also a single inheritance. लेकिन क्योंकि बी सी से इनहेरिट करता है, एंड इफ दैट इज, एंड ऑफ कोर्स वी आर ओनली टॉकिंग अबाउट पब्लिक इनहेरिटेंस इन दिस पर्टिकुलर केस, देयरफॉर एवरीथिंग विल बी पब्लिक. सो बी के अंदर एक इन अ वे अ कॉपी or an inherited instances of all the objects that are all the data members and functions of C will be present in B. ठीक है, तो in turn A जो है वो उसको access कर सकेगा, but you have to make it under some special provisions. ठीक है, so we'll see कि ये कैसे होता है, लेकिन B के अंदर तमाम instances of C accessible हैं, and because B is A is inheriting from B, therefore B के भी तमाम instances जो हैं वो A को accessible होंगे, और क्योंकि C की भी एक in a way, I mean you can say that a copy of all the instances or all the data members and functions are present in B, तो C को भी आप access कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, so we'll come to this point, but in simple terms, yes, inheritance can actually be is possible in this particular case. Okay, जी, so if Shoaib, Abdullah, your question is कि अगर base class के अंदर कोई private variable है, तो again the same logic would apply कि you can't directly access that private member, you can only access it through a function. ठीक है, तो आप वो फंक्शन के थ्रू उसको एक्सेस कर सकेंगे, अदरवाइज एक्सेसिबिलिटी विल नॉट बी पॉसिबल. Okay, so coming back to our discussion, if you declare an object car in this particular case, what will happen in this case is that as soon as you will declare the object car, car का एक object आप declare करते हैं, car obj, car object. So because car is inheriting from vehicle and four-wheeler together, therefore all the members that are present, whether data member or functions, including the constructors and destructors, if there are destructors present also, तो वो अपनी base class से inherit करेंगे. So in this particular case, you have to look at the sequence in which the constructors, let's say, will be called, because that's really important. The constructors किस तरीके से call हैं. The rest is almost similar. I mean same कि अगर आपका कोई data member four wheeler के अंदर है या कोई function four wheeler के अंदर है, so you can call it from class car, और कार का कोई object उन functions को, उन data members को call कर सकते हैं. How can that be done? We'll see in a while. लेकिन क्योंकि constructors automatically call होते हैं, so what would be the sequence in which the constructors will be called in this particular case? So what do you think? पहले कैसे constructors कैसे call होंगे, एक क्वेश्चन. और दूसरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि अगर फोर व्हीलर का कोई फंक्शन है या कोई डेटा मेंबर है, उसको मैंने एक्सेस करना है, तो कैसे एक्सेस करूंगा?
Sir, can you please repeat the question? मुझे दरमियान में
Okay, the question is कि I have declared an object of car here, right? So as soon as I declare the object of car, then of course the constructors will be called. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे car is getting inheritance or is getting the functions from a vehicle as well as four wheelers, right? तो कंस्ट्रक्टर कॉल कैसे होगी? व्हीकल का अपना कंस्ट्रक्टर है और फोर व्हीलर का अपना कंस्ट्रक्टर है. That's the question. Okay, so most of you have got it right. So सबसे पहले you have to look at the sequence. Okay, so the sequence here in which you have written down this inheritance, in this particular statement, vehicle comes first, followed by the four wheeler. ठीक है, so vehicle का कंस्ट्रक्टर पहले कॉल होगा, उसके बाद फोर व्हीलर का कंस्ट्रक्टर कॉल होगा, और फिर आखिर में अगर कार का कोई अपना कंस्ट्रक्टर है तो वो कंस्ट्रक्टर कॉल होगा. So vehicle, four-wheeler and car. This is how the sequence will go. ठीक है. Okay, so object dot vehicle can be called like this. नहीं, ये डिफॉल्ट कंस्ट्रक्टर है, इसकी एक्सप्लिसिट कॉल नहीं होती डिफॉल्ट कंस्ट्रक्टर की. हाँ, अगर पैरामीटराइज कंस्ट्रक्टर होगा तो उसकी आप एक्सप्लिसिट कॉल दे सकते हैं. जो अरेज आप जो लिख रहे हैं दैट इज नॉट नेसेसरी. ठीक है. यस, इफ देयर आर अदर फंक्शंस तो आप उनको कॉल कर सकते हैं, और उनको कॉल करने के लिए आपको सिंपल डॉट म्यूटेशन नहीं यूज करनी पड़ेगी, बल्कि स्कोप रेजोल्यूशन ऑपरेटर यूज करना पड़ेगा. सो वील कम टू दैट. अच्छा, व्हाट हैपेंस इफ आई चेंज द सीक्वेंस. लेट्स से कि यहाँ पे मैंने व्हीकल पहले लिखने की बजाय फोर व्हीलर पहले लिख दूं, पब्लिक फोर व्हीलर कॉमा पब्लिक व्हीकल लिख दूं. So in that case, the sequence in which these default constructors will be called will reverse. ठीक है. So if four-wheeler comes first, right, and the vehicle comes afterwards. So let's say कि इसको उठा के मैं पहले लिख दूं और इसको मैं यहाँ पे ले जाऊं. तो in that case, the constructor for the four-wheeler will be called first, followed by vehicle, followed by the constructor for car. Right. So this sequence is very important, क्योंकि ये sequence आपको बता रहा है कि किस sequence के अंदर constructor call जो है वो so this sequence needs to be you need to keep this sequence in mind. इस तरीके से जो है वो sequence call होगा, constructor call होगी. And we are talking about remember default constructors. So अगर आपके पास parameterized constructors हैं तो उन पैरामीटराइज्ड कंस्ट्रक्टर्स के लिए आपको एक्सप्लिसिट कॉल ऑफ दैट पैरामीटराइज्ड कंस्ट्रक्टर आपको देनी पड़ेगी. ओके. सो एंड पैरामीटराइज्ड कंस्ट्रक्टर ऑफ व्हीकल आपने कॉल करना है, या पैरामीटराइज्ड कंस्ट्रक्टर ऑफ फोर व्हीलर आपने कॉल करना है, या पैरामीटराइज्ड कंस्ट्रक्टर ऑफ कार आपने कॉल करना है. तीनों केसेस के अंदर आपके पास एक एक्सप्लिसिट कॉल आनी चाहिए. So when you are talking about object, और अगर आप vehicle का parameterized constructor call करना चाहते हैं तो you have to tell the system कि आप vehicle का parameterized constructor call करना चाहते हैं, और इसी तरह से four wheeler का अलग से आप call करना चाहते हैं. ठीक है जी. Okay, so coming to another example here, let's take another example. So this is again a simple example. यहाँ पे we have a class A. ठीक है. So this is class A, and just for simplicity we only have the constructor associated with class A. Then we have another class which is class B, and the constructor for class B is there. Then we have the derived class C, and it inherits publicly from B and A. And you have the constructor for the constructor for class C in this particular case. Okay, so in the main program, let's say if I declare an instance of class C, so how would this work? This would obviously first the constructor for B will be called, followed by the constructor for A, followed by the constructor for C. This is how this would actually be done. And if you change the sequence, obviously अगर मैं public A और public B कर देता हूँ, then the constructor for A will be called, followed by the constructor for B. अच्छा, the sequence in which the destructors are called, that would be the opposite, in which the constructors are actually called. So this is also important. So अगर आपके पास constructor calls B, A, C हैं, तो आपकी जो destructor calls होंगी, that would just be the opposite sequence, C, A, B. That would be the case in which the constructor calls will actually be done. ठीक है. So the one that comes latest is destroyed first. Okay. and that is obviously the case when you are using dynamic memory. In that case, this is quite important. Okay. So why inheritance is actually required? So inheritance is actually required. There are like multiple reasons for that. Lekin you have gone through this example and you have gone through the syntax. Now, what do you think? Why inheritance or multiple inheritance is required? आपके ख्याल में क्या वजह हो सकती है? You can open your mic, unmute yourself, and okay. Ibrahim says that it improves efficiency of the code, cleaner code, or reduces redundancy in code. Okay. We have characteristics of different better organization. एक helps in classification. Can be changed by someone else. Acha, so we have characteristics from different classes. A book can belong to a library and a person. Okay. Right. Unrelated information is separated. Suleiman का ये था. Asad said it can be changed by someone else. Fatma said helps in classification. Right. So that's, I mean, most of you are actually correct. But towards the end of today's lecture, I'll just give you a scenario. जिसमें you will actually see कि multiple inheritance जो है वो उसका एक advantage आएगा. But that would be a bit more complex example, in which instead of having 3 classes, we'll have another a 4th class. अभी हम तो 2 base class और एक derived class की बात कर रहे हैं. So we could have a scenario in which you have a say another layer added on top of the base class. So the base classes are also inheriting from another class. So you have a sort of a complete hierarchy. So you have a say grant sort of a base class, and then you have the base classes followed by the derived class. So we'll come to that discussion towards the end of today's lecture. But let's take a simple scenario. Okay, the scenario is that you want to like read a file and then write something in that file. Okay, so these are the 2 things that you have to do. So one way is that you write down a single piece of code जिसमें आप तमाम reading of a file उसका आप code लिख दें, और उसके साथ ही आप writing something to a file उसका भी आप code लिख दें. So you have a single piece of code और उसमें कोई क्लास स्ट्रक्चर नहीं है. लेकिन अब मोर say understandable structure would be that you have a separate class for reading a file and you have a separate class for writing a file. And if in a function, or if in a if you require in another class both these functions, for example, you want to read a file as well, you want to write to a file as well, in that case you can inherit, the new class can inherit the writing properties or the writing functionalities and the reading functionalities from those 2 classes. Okay, so so you have a, let's say, class that is written for reading the file only. You have another class that is written for writing the file only, and you have another class जहाँ पे आप read write दोनों करना चाहते हैं. So you have these 3 separate classes, but writing down, reading and writing separately in class file read write, you can simply inherit the functions of reading and writing from the 2 base classes. Okay, so आप अलग-अलग code and और यहाँ से इसकी reusability का concept भी आता है. So you have written a class file read. So in any program that you write, you can reuse this class. ठीक है, और उसको आप अपने main code में, I mean you can say have multiple codes, or हर code के अंदर you can reuse this particular bit. So that's why class structure जो है वो reusability भी आप कर सकते हैं. And how do you actually use it? You can simply use it by inheriting the properties of class class file read and class file write in your code, because you don't have to actually write that code for multiple programs. So in a way this would lead to patterns or other जो similar concepts हैं उसकी तरफ आपको ये लेके जाता है. So standardization is another reason that why this is done. So you have a standard way of reading a file, you have a standard way of writing a file, you write it once and then you can reuse it in your programs. And how do you actually reuse them? You can simply reuse them by including that class in your program and then inheriting the properties of those classes to a new class which you want to write down. Okay, so this is relatively say so this would provide you an insight into why this multiple inheritance thing is important. Okay, so this is primarily the structure that you have got here. So आपके पास class read भी है, class write भी है, and then you have another class file read and write. So you simply inherit file read and file write, and then you can use those. So you don't have to rewrite everything again and again. So you can reuse them. Okay, so you have this multiple inheritance architecture that we have got, and you know that how this multiple inheritance is actually working in this particular case. Okay, so here is the sample code from the previous slide. So we have a class which we have said that we have a class which is fread. This is another class, and here you have another class which is fwrite. और यहाँ पे you have a function that reads from a file, और fwrite के अंदर you have a function that writes to a file. And here you have, this is your sort of class that you have actually defined, which is a derived class. It actually inherits from fread and fwrite, both of them. So in the main program, this is an instance of fread write. F is an instance of fread write, and if I want to call, because both of the instances or the functions that are present in fread and in fwrite, they are inherited by fread write. So an instance of fread write can call any function that is present in both these classes. Okay, so read is a function that is part of fread. So f.read is the call that you can actually make directly. ठीक है, and because read का एक instance जो है, as I told you, is inherited by fread write, तो कोई भी object of fread write है that will get access to read. And you have to keep this in mind that this is public inheritance, therefore there aren't any restrictions that are present in this particular case. Acha, so f.read will call the read function, f.write will call the write function, right? So you can call both of these functions in your main program and the program will run. ठीक है जी? Okay, right? So simple function call. So this is a sort of a function call as if read and write are part of fread write class. And this is why is this happening? Because of this line that you have written, that is telling you कि आप तमाम objects और तमाम data members and functions of both these classes fread and fwrite have been inherited. Okay, so let's complicate things a little bit. I mean, and that is that in order to either read a file or to write a file, you have to open a file first. ठीक है, so let's assume कि आपने open file के लिए एक अलग आपने एक function लिखना है. So because that's a standard way of opening files, so therefore you can write down a separate sort of a function for that, and that function of opening the file could be part of the read file and it has to be part of the write file. ठीक है, so आपके पास ये जो function आपने यहाँ पे लिखा है write या फर्ज करें read. So the first thing that you'll have to do is that you'll have to open a file and then read. And again here, when you are going to write, you have to open a file and then write. Okay, so opening a file is again a standard process. Okay, so you can make it part of fread and fwrite separately. ठीक है, so that's like one way of doing it. आप इसको separately fread fwrite के अंदर आप लिख दें, लेकिन that then again this would be a repetition of code in fread class and fwrite class, क्योंकि opening a file again is a standard process, right? So what can you do in this particular case? So in order to read and write, you have to open a file. So opening of a file has a is also a standard way of say there is a standard piece of code that you have to actually write down that. ठीक है जी? No, we are not moving towards file writing. I'm not looking at the contents of read and write. I'm just giving you the overall concept. ठीक है, तो इसलिए हम उस तरफ नहीं जा रहे. अच्छा जी जी फातिमा, go ahead.
सर रीड और राइट जो है वो प्रीडिफाइंड फंक्शंस है या हमने डिफाइन अभी करना है?
I mean you can define them. ठीक है, you can define them separately. यहाँ पे we have just declared them. ठीक है, so because we are just giving you the concept, तो इसलिए उसकी complete definition हमने नहीं अभी लिखी, because we are not discussing file handling here. ठीक है, तो इसलिए उसके contents पे नहीं जा रहे कि read के contents क्या हैं या read function itself है क्या. So you can assume कि read function is part of fread and it has been defined somewhere else. ठीक है, so we are not concerned कि उसके अंदर क्या है अभी. ठीक है, so we are not into that domain yet. ठीक है, so coming back to the question कि आपके पास फाइल ओपन आपने दोनों केसेस में करनी है, right? So what would be the best way of doing it? जी, anyone? Okay, Kaim has actually said that you make a grand base class for opening file and we can make fread, fwrite inherit from that class. Define open class, open file class, Talal ka bhi theek hai, and make an open function and inherit it in read and write. So the thing is that now because opening a file is again a standard process, therefore what you can do is that you can add to this hierarchy, right? So before we go to that hierarchy, let's see कि क्या मैं कहना क्या चाह रहा हूँ. यहाँ पे let's say कि we write a separate function, and this separate function is, what is this separate function doing? And this separate function is opening the file. Okay, so this has been highlighted here. So you call a function open file, ठीक है, or then you read, and then you call a function open file, and then you write. ठीक है, so these two functions are exactly the same functions. ठीक है, so one way it would be, say, a lazy way of doing things would be that you, or well, it would be more of a time wastage, that you write make these functions part of class fread and class fwrite, और open फाइल के जो भी आपकी स्टेटमेंट्स हैं या जो एग्जीक्यूशन कोड है वो आप अलग से डिफाइन कर सकते हैं. दैट इज नॉट point of discussion here. The point of discussion here is if you have a common code of fread and fwrite, आप उसके साथ क्या करेंगे. ठीक है, so in order to read, in order to open a file, let's say कि आप ये कॉल कर सकते हैं in through an object f. ठीक है, अब ऑब्जेक्ट f से जब आप इसको कॉल करते हैं, now in this case let's forget about these two calls for a while. ठीक है, तो इन दो कॉल्स को let's forget about these two calls. ठीक है, आप सीधा f dot open करते हैं. So you have this function call which is f dot open, right? What do you think will happen here? Now you know that open is a function of fread. Open is also a function of fwrite, right? And fread and fwrite are the base classes of fread write, right? So f has the access to open. ठीक है, तो अगर मैं f dot open लिखता हूँ, तो क्या होगा? ओके, एहसन ने, मिनाहिल, both of you, well, you actually answered it in a question form. ठीक है, और क्वेश्चन फॉर्म ये है कि क्या यहाँ पे एरर नहीं आएगा? Why would an error come? F dot open. Why would an error come in this particular case? Okay, so the error would come because आपके पास f read में भी एक फंक्शन है which is open, और f write में भी एक फंक्शन है which is open. And when f read write will inherit from both these classes, so one instance of open will be inherited from f read, and another instance of open will be inherited from f write. So these would be two separate instances that are inherited by f read write. One instance of open has been inherited from f read. तो अगर f read में जो मैंने open का फंक्शन लिखा है, अगर मैंने उसको कॉल करना है, तो आई हैव टू एक्सप्लिसिटली टेल द सिस्टम कि मैं कौन सी ओपन फंक्शन को कॉल करना चाहता हूँ. Am I going to call, or am I intending to call a open function of fread, or I'm going to call the open function of fwrite? क्योंकि दोनों functions के नाम सेम, ठीक है. सो द कंपाइलर इन अ वे वुड गेट कंफ्यूज्ड कि मैं fwrite का ओपन फंक्शन एग्जीक्यूट करूं या fread का ओपन फंक्शन एग्जीक्यूट करूं. Though both of these functions may have the same body, they have the same piece of code, लेकिन the compiler will get confused here. तो f dot open से काम नहीं चलेगा, ठीक है. f dot open से काम उस वक्त चलेगा जब fread में और fwrite में फाइल के नाम डिफरेंट हो. लेट्स से इफ आई मेक वन एज ओपन एंड द अदर वन एज ओपन वन, लेट्स से, ठीक है. तो इस केस में दोनों के नाम फर्क हैं. So if in that case I write f dot open and f dot open one, then two instances, separate instances will be executed, और उसमें कोई confusion नहीं होगी. लेकिन यहाँ पे एक प्रॉब्लम है. यहाँ पे ये है कि दो फंक्शंस हैं और दो इंस्टेंसेस इनहेरिट किए हैं fread write में. अब कंपाइलर ये सोचेगा कि f डॉट ओपन में मैं कौन से इंस्टेंस एग्जीक्यूट करूं. fread का फंक्शन ओपन एग्जीक्यूट करना है या fwrite का फंक्शन ओपन एग्जीक्यूट करना है. So that will be a problem. So here I have to specify कि मैं किस ओपन की बात कर. Am I calling through f? Am I calling open of fread? So in that case I have to specify कि run the function open that is present in fread, और उसके लिए आपको स्कोप रेजोल्यूशन ऑपरेटर को यूज करना पड़ेगा, राइट. सो we'll see कि वो आप कैसे करेंगे. So that will basically be a problem in this particular case, and we'll see कि इसको हमने resolve कैसे करना है, ठीक है. तो एक किसी ने अगर ये कहा कि जी आप उसका प्राइवेट मेंबर उसका बना दें या कोई और आप सोल्यूशन निकालना चाहें, इससे भी मसला आपका हल नहीं होगा. यू विल स्टिल गेट एन एरर, ठीक है. सो हियर इज एन एग्जांपल जिसमें आप एक्सप्लिसिटली बता रहे हैं कि आपने कौन सा ओपन फंक्शन जो है वो एग्जीक्यूट कर, ठीक है जी. सो द एक्सप्लिसिट कॉल टू द ओपन of fread and open of fwrite, ठीक है. So the first call here will execute the function open that is present in fread, and the second line here will execute the function open that is present in fwrite. So explicit call आपको देनी पड़ेगी, right? Otherwise you will get an error, ठीक है. अगर आप सिंपल f डॉट ओपन लिखते हैं, जैसे यहाँ पे आपने f डॉट ओपन लिखा हुआ है, तो इससे ये मसला हल नहीं होगा, राइट. यू हैव टू गिव एन एक्सप्लिसिट कॉल दिस पर्टिकुलर केस, राइट. So you can have like functions with same name, lekin if you are have functions with same name and they are both the functions or those functions with same name are part of the base classes, in case of multiple inheritance, then you have to explicitly define कि आपने किस base class के function को execute करना है. So this is what you have to do. जी, try this out जी, and then see कि क्या होता है. ठीक है, you might have a different sort of IDE में थोड़ा सा difference आ जाए, लेकिन primarily this is जी जी तलहा वेरिएबल्स नेम के साथ भी एग्जैक्टली यही चीज़ होगी. सो वेरिएबल एक्सेसिबिलिटी भी आप इस तरीके से कर सकते हैं. जी जैन.
So sir, I wanted to ask that why is the primary purpose we are doing this? हम नाम चेंज कर लेते हैं, उसको open 1 कर देते हैं,
जी
उसको
जी
open
जी
2 कर
हाँ
देते हैं.
ठीक है
Why are we getting this?
जी. why we are doing this? Because this is well, I'm telling you that this is not the way of doing or writing down a code, क्योंकि opening file एक standard protocol है, standard procedure है. ठीक है. So if you have written a same code, f write के अंदर f write और f read के अंदर सेम कोड आपने लिखा है, तो अगर आपने लेट से कि उसको अलग अलग क्लासेस का हिस्सा बना दिया है, which is obviously not the correct, well this is the code will not have any problem, it will run perfectly, लेकिन that would be waste of say resources in this particular case. So we'll not actually be doing this. So if the two functions are exactly the same, जैसे इस slide के ऊपर आप देख सकते हैं, so you have two functions which are exactly same. For example, this function open and this function open, they are part of two separate classes, but they are exactly the same. So in this case, what you can do is an easier and a better solution is to make a grand base class. ठीक है. A grand base class would mean कि आप ये structure इसका बना लें. So you have a grand base class जिसमें what is happening here, you have moved this open function one step say above your base classes. Okay, so you have made a common base class, so we can call it a common base class or you can call it the grand base class. So uske andar we have put this function open. Okay, and then f read and f write can inherit from that common base class. ठीक है. तो इस सूरत में आपको void आपको open function जो है वो class f read या class f write के अंदर लिखने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. You can actually write down, you can make a common base class outside your standard base classes. ठीक है. And then add inheritance to it. So what is this structure telling you? This structure is telling you that class f read is inheriting from class file and class f write is inheriting from class file again. And then you have a class f read write which is inheriting from f read and f write. Right? Okay. So this would be a better way of writing down your code. ठीक है. Why is it better way of doing it? क्योंकि यहाँ पे आपने you are actually using inheritance in this particular case. ठीक है. और inheritance को use करते हुए your structure has become more clear. ठीक है. तो आपने जो common functions हैं which are in your base class, आपने उन common functions को भी उठा के एक grand base class बना दिया या common base class बना दिया उनके ऊपर. So you have added to the hierarchy. So now instead of having 2-layer structure, you have got a 3-layer sort of structure, right? Okay, जी हम
जी सर, तो अब हम जो void open है मतलब डॉट नोटेशन से एक्सेस कर सकते हैं f read write के अंदर.
जी इस पे हम आते हैं कि ये अब एक्सेस के इश्यूज क्या होंगे. एक्सेस के इश्यूज जो है ना वो वो अभी भी इसमें डायरेक्टली रिजॉल्व नहीं हो रहे, ठीक है, तो उस पे विल कम टू दैट पॉइंट कि एक्सेस कैसे करेंगे. आई जस्ट शो यू अ पीस ऑफ कोड. फर्स्ट आई विल शो यू the piece of code that would not work and then maybe the one that would work. ठीक जी जी फातिमा.
सर यहाँ जो आपने क्लास एफ रीड आगे क्लास फाइल की हुई है, ये पब्लिक फाइल नहीं होगा?
कहाँ पे?
सर ये जो आपने क्लास
जी जी जी
रीड और
ओके या जी जी यू आर राइट. सो यू कैन राइट डाउन पब्लिक हियर. बिल्कुल ठीक ठीक है. so that might be a I've missed that part here. ठीक है, तो आप उसको ऐड कर सकते हैं. Okay. Right. So let's see कि what is this? What will happen now? Will this resolve the problem or not? क्या इससे, हाँ एक चीज तो इससे हुई है for sure, and that is that your code has actually become more standardized. ठीक है, आपने क्या किया कि open file is a standard process, you have made it a separate file. Read file is a standard process, you have made it a separate, sorry, class. You have made it a separate class. Write file is write to file is a standard process, you have made it a separate class. Okay, and then using this inheritance you are actually connected these classes together in order to perform some action. Okay, so this is again in line with our principle that we have set. Okay, you have this concept of reusability here, or you have the concept of standardizing your code. Okay, so we have done this, so fine. But if you look at the last line here, agar aap is line pe dekhe, so what are you doing here? You are actually again inheriting publicly from fread, and you are inheriting publicly from fwrite. Fine. अच्छा, fread की पेरेंट क्लास जो है वो क्लास फाइल है, और fwrite की भी जो पेरेंट क्लास है वो क्लास फाइल है. ठीक है. So now if I give a call to open, how can I do that? और अगर मैं डायरेक्ट कॉल करता हूँ open को, तो will that be possible or not? Let's say कि मैं fread write का एक instance f declare करता हूँ, and then I say f dot open. What do you think will happen? Okay, so you will get an error again in this particular case. Why are you getting an error here in this particular case? अगर मैं f dot open directly लिखता हूँ, so if I write like f dot open, ठीक है, so if I write this, so why will you get an error? जी Asan. Okay. Okay, so let's just understand what's happening here. Okay, class file void open जो है, that's the parent class of fread. तो fread के अंदर open का एक instance आ जाएगा. ठीक है जी. So you will have an instance of open here. ठीक है जी. Okay, and same is the case with fwrite. fwrite is the derived class from class file. तो open का एक इंस्टेंस इधर भी आ जाएगा. ठीक है जी, बिकॉज ओपन विल बी इनहेरिटेड बोथ बाय fread एंड fwrite. तो एक इंस्टेंस ओपन का जो है वो fread में है, एक इंस्टेंस ओपन का है जो है वो fwrite में है. सो यू अगेन हैव टू इंस्टेंसेस ऑफ ओपन. और जब मैं यहाँ पे ओपन को कॉल देता हूँ, लेट्स से मैं यहाँ पे ओपन को कॉल दूंगा, तो अगेन द कंपाइलर विल गेट कंफ्यूज्ड कि मुझे ये वाला ओपन एग्जीक्यूट करना है या ये वाला ओपन एग्जीक्यूट करना है. The problem that we discussed in the previous slide, that problem has actually again come up. क्यों? The only thing that we have done in this case is on this slide is that we have organized our code in a better way. ठीक है, practically हमने एक और class इसमें add कर दी है, लेकिन the problem of having two instances of open is not resolved yet. So I can't still give a direct call to open through an instance of freadWrite. I can't do that. Still I can't do that. क्योंकि the compiler will get confused कि क्या मैं ये instance execute करूं या मैं ये instance execute करूं, कौन सा instance मैं execute करूं, because you have got two instances of open here again. ठीक है, or in other words, if I want to access open, I can go to open via this route, or I can go to access open via this route. So which route should I follow? Should I use this route to access open, or should I go via fwrite? Problem still persists. ठीक है, तो जो प्रॉब्लम हमने पहले बात की थी वो प्रॉब्लम अभी भी है, और उसका हल अभी तक वो ये है कि you will have to give an explicit call. Tell the system that you want to execute the function open that is an inherited instance of fread, or you want to execute the function open that is the inherited instance of fwrite. Again, जो scope resolution operator जो हमने पहले use किया है, the same will work. ठीक है जी, the same will work in this particular case. लेकिन you can't give a direct call to open even in this structure. ठीक है, this is what you call as the diamond problem. So this problem is actually known as the diamond problem. ठीक है जी. So again, here is the same piece of code that we have written in this particular case. यहाँ पे the same diamond structure has been implemented. आपके पास class file है, ठीक है, this is your class file which is the common base class. Then you have got fread which inherits from file, then you have got fwrite which inherits from file, and then you have got freadWrite which inherits from fread and fwrite, right? So if I have an instance of freadWrite f here, and if I give an explicit call to open, again this would give you an error because the same confusion still persists unless you give a direct call as Tanya, as SN has actually SN Amin has actually mentioned or in the chat, और जो मैंने आपको पहले बताया था, तो f.fread scope resolution : open. So that would tell you कि instance of fread will be called. Okay, so the problem that we want or the solution to the problem that we want is still not available, and the solution that I want is that I want to give a direct call to open, and I'm not able to do that so far in this case again. Okay, so as I told you, this problem is called a diamond problem. The diamond problem is that when you have two paths to access a common function, then which path to choose? So a call to open via this path or via this path, which path has to be chosen? So that's actually a confusion, therefore you will get an error. Okay, you will get an error in this particular case. So how can you resolve this error? Okay, any ideas? इसको हम कैसे resolve कर सकते हैं? Do you have any ideas? Inherit, okay, so एक तलहा का जो एक क्वेश्चन है वो ये है, यानी जो सोल्यूशन और जो नशेत ने भी और मे बी एहसन ने भी शायद यही बात किया है. I'll just राइट इट हेयर कि वाई डोंट यू, यहाँ पे आपने ये कहा है कि आपकी जो पेरेंट क्लास है ऑफ एफ रीड राइट वो एफ रीड है और एफ राइट है. ठीक है, आप ये भी कर सकते हैं कि आप एफ रीड की डायरेक्ट इनहेरिटेंस ले लें क्लास फाइल से. ठीक है, तो आप ये कहें कि ठीक है, इट ऑल्सो इनहेरिट्स डायरेक्टली फ्रॉम क्लास. सो इन अदर वर्ड्स एक कनेक्शन आपका ये वाला कनेक्शन आ जाएगा. ठीक है, so that could be a solution. I don't know, you'll have to just check this out कि आप इसको कैसे करें. So what is this telling you? This is telling you कि f read write जो है अब 3 क्लासेस से इनहेरिट कर रहा है. f read से भी कर रहा है, f write से भी कर रहा है और फाइल से भी कर रहा है. फाइन. सो इन दैट केस व्हाट यू कैन डू इज आप ये कर सकते हैं कि आप अपनी जो ये जो लाइन है यू कैन मॉडिफाई दिस लाइन. ठीक है, ट्राई टू डू दैट एंड सी whether it works or not. I'll leave this as an exercise for you. The slides are already uploaded, so you can actually have a look at this. Acha, right. So in that case, will the problem resolve or not? I mean, I'll leave this as a question. ठीक है, क्या ये प्रॉब्लम को रिजॉल्व करेगा या नहीं करेगा. ठीक है जी, क्योंकि अब देखें, अगर आप क्लास से डायरेक्ट इनहेरिट कर रहे हैं तो अब आपके पास ओपन के कितने इंस्टेंसेस हैं विच आर अवेलेबल टू एफ रीड राइट. I'll just give you a feeler here. 3 instances. So isn't the problem
लेकिन हम अगर क्लास को एफ रीड और एफ राइट में इनहेरिट ना करें और डायरेक्ट एफ रीड राइट में इनहेरिट करें सिर्फ फाइल को
एफ रीड राइट में
तो आई थिंक दैट शुड रिजॉल्व कि सिर्फ हम एफ रीड राइट में हम डायरेक्ट क्लास फाइल को इनहेरिट करें, बाकी दोनों में ना करें. तो सो ये कौन था, तला था. अच्छा, ओके. तो ये है कि जब आप इसको डायरेक्ट करते हैं तो ये इनहेरिटेंस आप इसकी खत्म कर दें. ठीक है, ये इनहेरिटेंस आप इसकी खत्म कर दें. आई मीन ये लिंक्स आप खत्म कर दें. दैट मींस दैट यू हैव एन इंस्टेंस ऑफ लेट्स से मल्टीपल इनहेरिटेंस इन दिस पर्टिकुलर केस. ठीक है, लेकिन क्लास एफ रीड राइट के अंदर मल्टीपल इनहेरिटेंस आपके पास 3 बेस क्लासेस से आ रही है. ठीक है जी, सो दैट कुड बी वन ऑफ द सॉल्यूशंस. ठीक है, अच्छा, लेट्स लिसन टू फातिमा फर्स्ट एंड देन वी विल मूव ऑन. जी फातिमा.
सर लेकिन अगर हम क्लास फाइल भी सॉरी डायरेक्टली इनहेरिट कर देते हैं और क्लास एफ रीड और क्लास एफ राइट भी इनहेरिट हो रही हैं, तो फिर वो 3 इंस्टेंसेस होंगे तब भी हम डायरेक्टली नहीं कॉल कर सकते ना, तब भी हमें करना होगा.
यू आर राइट. सो उसके लिए ये कनेक्शंस आपको जो है ना, ये वाले जो कनेक्शंस मैंने आपको बताए हैं, ये कनेक्शंस खत्म करने पड़ेंगे आपको. ठीक है, तो जब आप ये 2 कनेक्शंस खत्म कर देंगे तो यू विल ओनली हैव वन instance of open that would be available to f read write. ठीक है, तो that case the problem will get resolved. ठीक है, लेकिन and yeah, because the instance of open will not be present in f read or f write, so you will only have one instance in that case. तो एक instance आपने इसको अगर explicit instance अगर आपके पास एक है तो then this would perfectly work. Okay, but is that so what we have done now, अगर हम ये connections खत्म कर देंगे then it's not diamond problem anymore. ठीक है, so it's not a diamond problem. So ये तो आपने diamond problem को ही खत्म कर दिया. तो the solution to the diamond problem, let's say कि we don't actually do anything. ठीक है, हम इसी स्ट्रक्चर को रखना चाहते हैं, इसी इनहेरिटेंस के साथ हम इसको रखना चाहते हैं, बट स्टिल वी वांट के एन एक्सप्लिसिट कॉल टू ओपन फ्रॉम बाय एन इंस्टेंस ऑफ एफ रीड राइट शुड वर्क. ठीक है जी, सो हाउ कैन वी सॉल्व दिस प्रॉब्लम, राइट? So let's just see what could be another way of doing that. Now this brings us to the concept of virtual inheritance. Okay. Virtual inheritance और virtual inheritance क्या है? Virtual inheritance ये है कि virtual inheritance is a name which is given to a situation where this type of a diamond problem that we have just discussed arises. ठीक है? And what you want is that you want to create in a way a link between the common base class and the child class, which is represented by this dotted line. आप ये कहते हैं virtual inheritance में कि the inheritance that or the instances for the child class, now this is important, that the instance that you want to access for the child class through the base classes, ठीक है, should be overwritten when you want to access a function that is present in the common base class. ठीक है जी. So let me put it again. तो हम क्या करना चाह रहे हैं? हम ये करना चाह रहे हैं कि we want कि अब let's say कि इस situation में हमारे पास in the diamond scenario you have got two instances of open. एक instance of open जो है वो f read में है और एक instance of open है f write में. तो आप क्या करना चाह रहे हैं? आप ये करना चाह रहे हैं कि instances that are present in f read and f write, these should not be given any priority. In fact, a direct call from the common base class be executed. इसके लिए you'll have to change a code little bit. ठीक है? So I'll just show you कि आपने change क्या करनी है and then we'll see कि ये execute कैसे होगा. Okay, so this is what you will have to do. You'll have to call or you'll have to say कि the inheritance of the base classes f read and f write is virtual from the class file. ठीक है? So class file से ये virtual inheritance है. ठीक है? So this is what would virtual inheritance mean? कि इन दोनों classes की जो parent class है, अगर कोई child इस parent class को direct call देता है, किसी function को direct call देता है, तो the instances inherited through f read and f write will be overwritten or will be suppressed in a way. ठीक? Okay. Let me just show you how this would work and then maybe you can understand it better. So अगर मैं इसको virtual inheritance में convert कर, I'll just repeat it again. अगर मैं इसको virtual inheritance में convert कर देता हूँ, I don't have say the standard inheritance जो मैंने पहले बताया. What I have done here is that I have added this keyword virtual here. ठीक है? So virtual inheritance क्या करेगी? Virtual inheritance ये करेगी कि अब अगर मैं f read write का कोई इंस्टेंट उठाता हूँ और f dot open करता हूँ, okay, so there is noise here. Tell me if the reduces a little bit. So is it better now? Okay. Okay, great. So what we have done is we have added this keyword virtual here. और ये virtual करेगा क्या? We'll just see in a while. लेकिन by adding this virtual keyword, what I have done is कि अब मैं open को direct call दे सकता हूँ through an instance of a child class. F dot open in this particular case will work. The program will work now. ठीक है? Right?
why is it working now? The reason for that is that I have added this keyword virtual here. And what is this virtual telling me? Virtual ये कह रहा है कि if I write this keyword virtual, आपके पास let's say हमने ये discuss किया था कि दो paths से of reaching the open function, ठीक है? One is via fread, the other one is via fwrite. Diamond problem में यही होता है कि आपके पास दो paths हैं. So if I write virtual, by writing down this keyword virtual, I am actually establishing a virtual connection directly between the common base class or the grand base class and the child. And that is a virtual connection. It's not a direct sort of a physical inheritance that is done through writing down a particular statement. But this keyword virtual is actually doing this thing. Okay? So let me come to this discussion, come to this problem here. Okay. So virtual क्या करेगा? अगर इस inheritance को मैं virtual कर देता हूँ, ठीक है जी? So as a result, it will bypass all the paths that are leading or that are connecting the child and the grand base, right? So what will happen here is, because of this virtual, a virtual connection between the grand base class and the child class will be established. ठीक है? You can call it the primary base class कह लें, या grand base class कह लें, या common base class कह लें. So because of this virtual keyword, or the virtual, we call it virtual inheritance, it would mean that these two classes are inheriting everything which is present from the class file, लेकिन they are virtually inheriting. ठीक है? So whenever I'll have a direct call from the child, which is fReadWrite class, to the parent class, which is class file, a virtual connection will be there between the two. So a direct call to open by an instance of fReadWrite will work. Okay. Now this type of a scenario in which an explicit inheritance has not been established between the child and the common base class. So an explicit inheritance has not been established, but a virtual inheritance has been established between these two. Okay. And in order to establish that, you'll have to tell the system कि जितनी inheritance आपकी base class से, यानी जो parent class से या common base class से निकल रही हैं, they are all virtual. That means that they can be overwritten or they can be suppressed whenever there is an explicit call from a child. So from level 3, let's say this as level 3 and this as level 1 of inheritance and this as level 2 of inheritance. So level 1 or 2 के दरमियान virtual inheritance आप establish कर दें. In that case, you can have a direct connection between 1 and 3. That means कि third level के ऊपर जो भी आपके पास class है, that class can directly access the functions that are present at level 1. लेकिन in order to do that, you have to establish a virtual inheritance thing, or virtual inheritance between level 1 and level 2. So level 1 is of the common base class, level 2 is of the base classes, and level 3 is of the child class or the derived class. So this is level 3 is derived class, level 2 is the base class, and level 1 is the parent class. राइट जी. अच्छा जी मुस्तफ़ा.
सर मुझे बस इस चीज़ में कंफ्यूजन हो रही थी कि जब आप वर्चुअल लिखते हैं fRead और fWrite में, तो वो एसेंशियली आप कहने करता ये है कि जब fReadWrite से आप ओपन को कॉल करेंगे तो वो जो fRead और fWrite में उसको इग्नोर करके डायरेक्ट क्लास फाइल में डाला जाएगा.
हाँ, इफ देयर इज अ डायरेक्ट कॉल. ठीक है, अगर डायरेक्ट कॉल नहीं है तो फिर नॉर्मली काम करेगा. सो आई जस्ट कम टू द कोड हियर अगेन. तो अगर मैं यहाँ पे लेट्स से f.open लिखता हूँ, सो नाउ दिस विल एग्जीक्यूट. देयर वोंट बी एनी प्रॉब्लम हियर, क्योंकि अब वो जो पाथ में कंफ्यूजन आ रही थी ना, दैट विल बी रिजॉल्व्ड. राइट? अच्छा, दैट डजंट मीन कि मैं एफ रीड और एफ राइट के थ्रू ओपन को कॉल नहीं दे सकता. आई कैन ऑल्सो डू दिस, एफ डॉट रीड एंड ओपन एंड एफ डॉट अच्छा sorry, yeah, so in this particular case, this particular case, this would actually work, and f dot f read or open जो है that will not work. ठीक है, so ये नहीं काम करेगा, so this will not work. ठीक है, so this would give you an error as far as I know. ठीक है, so this would work. ठीक है, so all these connections are in a way overwritten in this particular case. ठीक है, I hope this is clear. Just give me a minute, please. Between the parent, the grandparent and the child, right? अच्छा, इफ अगर आपके पास एक क्लास को आपने वर्चुअल कह दिया और दूसरे को वर्चुअल नहीं कहा, तो उस सूरत में क्या होगा? उस सूरत में आप एक्सप्लिसिट कॉल क्या दे सकेंगे? Because in that case you will not have any sort of confusion at all. ठीक है, so क्या आप मल्टीपल पाथ्स आपके पास आएंगे? क्या आप इस सूरत में इफ लेट्स से जो कायम ने क्वेश्चन पूछा है कि इफ एफ रीड इज वर्चुअल एंड एफ राइट इज नॉट वर्चुअल, उस सूरत में क्या होगा? So can anyone try this out? Same as the diamond problem. Okay. And can you think of the reason that why is this happening? Okay. Right. Okay. Right. So you again have the problem of having the multiple paths that are present. क्योंकि वर्चुअल के केस में भी तो इंस्टेंस उसके पास आ रहा है, तो एक वर्चुअल के थ्रू इंस्टेंस आ रहा है और एक आपके पास डायरेक्ट आ रहा है, और वर्चुअल की वजह से तो मल्टीपल पाथ्स जो हैं वो स्टिल आपके पास आएंगे, सो यू विल हैव टू गिव एन एक्सप्लिसिट कॉल इन दिस पर्टिकुलर केस. ओके, so I think we can leave it here, and maybe next time when we'll